You are wasting everyone's time with your ignorant questions, Nora. Alpha Marcus's voice cut through the Grand Council chamber like a blade, sharp and designed to humiliate. This is a matter for those with actual power, actual understanding. Not for a wolfless Omega who should be serving drinks, not speaking. The laughter that followed was worse than the words themselves. It echoed off the stone walls of the ancient meeting hall, bouncing back at Nora from every direction, from every powerful wolf seated around the massive oak table. Alphas from 12 different packs, their betas, their advisors, all of them laughing at her. All of them looking at her like she was nothing, less than nothing. A mistake that had somehow wandered into a room where she did not belong. Nora felt heat crawl up her neck, felt her hands trembling where she clutched the treaty document she had been reviewing. She had only been allowed in this room because her father, Beta of the Blood Moon Pack, needed someone to take notes. A secretary. A silent, invisible presence. But she had read the treaty. She had read it 3 times, actually. And each time the same glaring problems jumped out at her. Problems that apparently no one else in this room full of supposed leaders had noticed. "I apologize for speaking out of turn," Nora said, forcing her voice to remain steady even as her heart hammered against her ribs. "But the territory divisions in Section 4 directly contradict the hunting rights outlined in Section 7, and the timeline for the military alliance in Section 9 makes it impossible to meet the requirements listed in Section 3. If we sign this as written, we will be in immediate breach of our own agreement." The silence that followed was somehow worse than the laughter. Marcus rose from his seat, his considerable height and broad shoulders making him look even more imposing. His wolf was right there beneath his skin. She could see it in his eyes, golden and furious. "You dare to suggest that every alpha in this room, wolves who have led their packs for decades, who have negotiated countless treaties and alliances, somehow missed what you, a 23-year-old wolfless failure, supposedly caught?" His voice dropped to something dangerous. "You dare to imply that we are fools?" "I am not implying anything about anyone's intelligence," Nora said, though her voice was quieter now, the weight of his anger and the disgust radiating from everyone in, the room pressing down on her like a physical force. "I am simply pointing out inconsistencies in the document itself, mathematical impossibilities. If the northern territories are divided as outlined in Section 4, there is no way to maintain the patrol routes required in Section 8. The numbers do not work, and the payment schedule for the shared resources cannot possibly align with the delivery dates. These are not matters of opinion or strategy. They are facts." Her father stood, abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the stone floor. Nora saw the fury and embarrassment on his face, and knew she had crossed a line she could not uncross. "Nora, leave. Now. You have embarrassed yourself in this pack enough for one day." But it was Alpha Damon of the Silvercrest pack who spoke next, his handsome face twisted with contempt. "This is what happens when we allow weakness to persist out of misplaced compassion. She should have been exiled years ago. A wolf without a wolf has no place among us, certainly no place questioning her betters." "The treaty is fine," Beta Catherine added, her voice dripping with condescension. "The treaty has been reviewed by the finest legal minds in all 12 packs. If there were problems, actual problems, they would have been found by now. What you are doing, girl, is desperately seeking attention, trying to make yourself seem important, seem valuable, when we all know the truth. You are neither." More laughter, more looks of disgust and pity and contempt. Nora felt something inside her cracking. That careful wall she had built over years of rejection and ridicule, over a lifetime of being told she was worthless, was finally starting to crumble. Maybe they were right. Maybe she had imagined the problems. Maybe her desperate need to prove she had value, to prove she could contribute something despite lacking a wolf, had made her see conspiracies and errors that were not actually there. She opened her mouth to apologize again, to leave as her father had commanded, when a voice spoke from the shadows at the back of the room. A voice that made every single wolf in the chamber freeze. She is correct. The voice was deep, cold. and carried the kind of authority that made it impossible to ignore or disobey. Nora turned with everyone else to see a figure step forward from where he had been standing so still, so silent, that she had not even registered his presence. Kieran Ashford, the Alpha King. Nora's breath caught in her throat. She had never seen him in person before. No one saw the Alpha King unless he wanted to be seen. He ruled the largest and most powerful pack in North America, controlled territories that spanned thousands of miles, commanded the loyalty and fear of every pack under his domain. He was legend and nightmare combined, a wolf so dominant, so utterly ruthless, that even other alphas submitted to him without question. And he had been in this room the entire time, watching, listening. Kieran moved forward into the light, and Nora felt her body react in ways she did not understand. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders and a predator's grace that made it clear he could kill everyone in this room without breaking a sweat. His hair was dark, almost black, cut short but somehow still managing to look untamed. His face was all hard angles and sharp edges, handsome in a brutal, unforgiving way. But it was his eyes that held her. Silver, not the gold of a normal wolf, but pure silver, cold and assessing and utterly merciless. "Your Majesty," Alpha Marcus stammered, dropping immediately into a submissive posture, his head bowed. "We had no idea you were present. We would never have conducted business so casually if we had known." Every other wolf in the room followed suit, dropping their gazes, bowing their heads, showing their throats in the ultimate gesture of submission. Every wolf except Nora, who was too shocked to move, too confused to remember protocol. Kieran's silver eyes locked on hers, and she felt the full weight of his attention like a physical thing. It was terrifying. It was electrifying. It made every nerve in her body come alive in a way she had never experienced. "The Omega is correct about every single point she raised," Kieran said, his gaze still fixed on Nora, even as he addressed the room. "The treaty as written is deliberately designed to fail. The contradictions she identified are not accidents or oversights. They are traps. Carefully constructed traps meant to ensure that the moment you sign this document, you will all be in breach of its terms. Which means the pack who authored this treaty, who proposed this alliance, will have legal grounds to declare war on all of you simultaneously." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 20 degrees. Nora watched as confusion and then dawning horror spread across the faces of the assembled alphas. "That is impossible," Alpha Damon said, though his voice lacked conviction. "The Nightshade Pack proposed this alliance in good faith. They have been our allies for generations." Kieran finally looked away from Nora, his cold gaze sweeping across the council members. "The Nightshade Pack was infiltrated 8 months ago. Your trusted allies are being controlled by the Silverfang Syndicate, a group that has been systematically working to destabilize and eventually conquer every major pack in this territory. This treaty is their endgame. You sign it, you become bound by terms you cannot possibly fulfill. They declare justified war, and they take everything you have while the Council of Elders stands by and does nothing because technically, legally, you broke the treaty first." The silence was absolute. Nora could hear her own heartbeat, could hear the sharp intake of breath from her father, the barely audible whimper of fear from one of the younger betas. "How do you know this?" Alpha Marcus asked, his face pale. "Because I have been hunting the Silverfang Syndicate for 2 years, Kieran said coldly. "Because I have watched them corrupt and destroy 4 packs already using variations of this exact strategy. And because I came to this meeting specifically to stop you from making the same fatal mistake. I expected to have to explain the trap myself. I did not expect a wolfless Omega to see it first." His eyes found Nora again, and there was something in his gaze now that had not been there before. Interest. Assessment. Something that made her skin feel too tight, too hot. If you are enjoying this story, do not forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories like this one. Your Majesty, if what you say is true, then we are already in danger, Beta Catherine said, her earlier condescension completely gone, replaced by genuine fear. The Nightshade representatives are due to arrive tomorrow for the formal signing ceremony, if they realize we know about the trap. She did not finish the sentence. But she did not need to. Everyone understood. If the Silverfang Syndicate realized their plan had been exposed, they would likely attack immediately, before the packs could organize a defense. They will not realize anything, Kieran said, because we are going to sign the treaty. The shock in the room was palpable. But Your Majesty, you just said it is a trap, Alpha Marcus protested. It is a trap, Kieran agreed. Which is why we are going to spring it on our terms, not theirs. We will sign the treaty, but we will modify it. Small changes, subtle changes that fix the contradictions the Omega identified while appearing to be minor clerical corrections. The Silverfang Syndicate will not notice until it is too late. And when they try to declare war based on breaches that no longer exist, we will have them exactly where we want them. It was brilliant, ruthless and dangerous, but brilliant. Nora found herself leaning forward slightly, her mind already racing through the implications, through what would need to be changed and how to make those changes appear insignificant. Who will make these modifications? Alpha Daemon asked. It will need to be someone with an exceptional eye for detail, someone who understands both the legal language and the strategic implications, and it will need to be done tonight, before the Nightshade representatives arrive. Kieran's gaze had not left Nora. She will do it. Every head in the room turned to stare at her. Nora felt her stomach drop. Your Majesty, I cannot possibly, she started, but Kieran cut her off with a slight gesture of his hand. You can, and you will. You saw what 12 alphas, 20 betas, and half a dozen specially trained legal advisors missed. You saw it clearly enough to speak up in a room full of predators who wanted nothing more than to tear you apart for your impertinence. That takes both intelligence and courage, both of which I need for this task. He took a step closer to her, and Nora had to fight the urge to back away. His presence was overwhelming, his power pressing against her like a wave. You will work through the night to modify this treaty. You will make changes that are legally sound but appear cosmetic. And tomorrow, when the Nightshade pack arrives, you will present the modified treaty as if it is simply a cleaner version of the original. Can you do this? Nora swallowed hard. She wanted to say no. She wanted to run from this room, from this impossible task, from the weight of responsibility being placed on her shoulders by the most powerful and terrifying wolf in existence. But she also felt something else rising in her chest. Vindication. Validation. Proof that she was not useless, not worthless, not the failure everyone had always told her she was. Yes, Your Majesty, she heard herself say. I can do this. Something that might have been approval flickered in Kieran's silver eyes. Good. You will work in my quarters where no one can disturb or distract you. I will assign guards to ensure your safety and your privacy. Everything you need will be provided. He turned to address the council. The rest of you will continue preparations for tomorrow's ceremony, as if nothing has changed. You will give no indication that you suspect anything. You will treat the Nightshade representatives with the same courtesy and respect you always have. And you will follow my lead when the time comes to act. Am I understood? A chorus of, Yes, Your Majesty, filled the room. Kieran nodded once, then looked back at Nora. Come with me. It was not a request. Nora glanced at her father, but he would not meet her eyes. None of them would. The same wolves who had been laughing at her, mocking her, dismissing her minutes ago, now looked at her with confusion, with resentment, with something that might have been fear. She had been elevated by the Alpha King himself. She had gone from worthless Omega to essential asset in the span of a single conversation. And she had no idea how to process any of it. She followed Kieran from the council chamber, acutely aware of every eye on her, of every whispered conversation that started the moment she passed. His guards fell into step around them, massive warriors who moved with deadly grace, who kept their eyes forward but their attention on everything around them. They walked through corridors Nora had never been allowed in before, past rooms she had only heard about, deeper into the heart of the compound that served as neutral territory for council meetings. Kieran did not speak, did not slow his pace, did not acknowledge her at all. He moved like violence contained in flesh, like a storm moments before it broke. And Nora found herself studying him despite her better judgment, found herself noticing things she should not notice. The way his shoulders moved beneath his black shirt, the corded muscles of his forearms, the precise economical grace of every movement, the sense of absolute control that radiated. From him, like heat. They finally stopped in front of a heavy wooden door guarded by 2 more warriors. Kieran pushed it open and gestured for her to enter. The room beyond was not what she expected. She had imagined something cold and military, all hard surfaces and strategic maps. Instead, she found a space that was almost comfortable. A massive desk dominated one wall, covered in papers and documents, and what looked like correspondence from packs across the continent. Floor to ceiling. Bookshelves lined another wall, filled with texts on law, history, strategy, and warfare. A fireplace crackled with low flames, casting warm light across dark wood floors and deep leather furniture. "You will have everything you need here," Kieran said, moving to the desk and gathering the papers there into neat stacks that he set aside. Fresh copies of the treaty, reference materials on pack law and alliance protocols, writing implements. Food and water will be brought to you every 2 hours. "You will not leave this room until the work is complete. Do you understand?" Nora nodded, still trying to process the fact that she was standing in what was clearly the Alpha King's private office, about to spend the entire night here, working on a task that could determine whether thousands of wolves lived or died. "I understand, Your Majesty." He studied her for a long moment, those silver eyes seeing far too much. "You are afraid," he observed. It was not a question. Nora considered lying, but something about his directness made deception seem pointless. "Yes, Your Majesty." "Good," Kieran said. "Fear will keep you focused. Overconfidence is what gets people killed." He moved toward the door, then paused and looked back at her. "Why did you speak up in the council chamber? You knew they would mock you. You knew they would try to humiliate you. You have lived your entire life being dismissed and degraded by wolves, who think power can only come from strength and dominance. So why risk making yourself a target yet again?" Nora opened her mouth, closed it, tried to find words for something she had never fully articulated even to herself. "Because I was right," she finally said. "Because I saw something that needed to be said, something that could save lives, and staying silent just to protect myself from embarrassment felt like cowardice. I would rather be humiliated for speaking truth than complicit in disaster through silence." Something changed in Kieran's expression. It was subtle, just the slightest softening around his eyes. But it transformed his entire face for a heartbeat, made him look less like a nightmare and more like a man. "That is the difference between you and them," he said quietly. "You understand that real strength is not the absence of fear. It is the choice to act despite it." Then he was gone, the door closing behind him with a soft click, leaving Nora alone in the Alpha King's private office, with a treaty to rewrite and a weight on her shoulders. That felt like it might crush her. She stood there for a moment, letting herself feel the fear, the doubt, the sheer impossibility of what she had been asked to do. Then she took a deep breath, walked to the desk, and picked up the first copy of the treaty. She had work to do. The hours that followed blurred together into a haze of concentration. Nora read through every page of the treaty, taking notes on every contradiction, every impossible timeline, every trap carefully hidden in legal. Language designed to confuse and overwhelm. And there were so many. Far more than she had identified in her initial reading. The Silverfang Syndicate had been thorough. They had woven their trap through dozens of clauses and subclauses, creating a web that would have been almost impossible to escape once signed. Almost. But almost was not the same as impossible. Nora began making changes. Small things at first. Adjusting a date here, clarifying a territorial boundary there, rewording a section. On resource sharing to remove an ambiguous phrase that could be interpreted in multiple contradictory ways. Each change had to be subtle enough to seem like minor clerical housekeeping, while actually removing a strand of the trap. It was like defusing a bomb while making it look like you were just polishing the casing. She lost track of time. Food appeared on the desk at regular intervals, and she ate without tasting it. Water was refilled, and she drank without noticing. The fire was tended by silent servants who came and went like ghosts. And she worked. She worked until her eyes burned, and her hand cramped from writing, and her back ached from hunching over the desk. But slowly, steadily, the treaty transformed. The traps were neutralized. The contradictions were resolved. The impossible timelines were adjusted to something actually achievable. And through it all, she made sure every change could be justified as a reasonable clarification or correction. Nothing that would raise suspicion. Nothing that would alert the Silverfang Syndicate that their plan had been discovered. She was so deep in concentration that she did not hear the door open. Did not notice she was no longer alone until a voice spoke from directly behind her. "You have been working for 11 hours without a break." Nora jumped, spinning in her chair to find Kieran standing a few feet away, watching her with that unreadable expression. Her heart hammered from the surprise, from the sudden awareness that she was alone with the Alpha King in the middle of the night, from the way his presence seemed to fill the entire room. "Your Majesty," she said, trying to calm her racing pulse. "I did not hear you enter." "I know," he said, moving closer to look at the papers spread across the desk. "You were completely absorbed in the work. That level of focus is rare. Most wolves cannot maintain it for more than a few hours before their attention starts to fragment." He picked up one of the pages Shisai had finished, scanning it with those sharp silver eyes. Nora held her breath, waiting for him to find fault, to tell her she had done it wrong, that her changes were too obvious or not effective enough. "This is excellent," Kieran said finally, setting the page down and picking up another. "The modifications are subtle but comprehensive. You have not just fixed the contradictions I identified. You have found others, layers of manipulation I had not even noticed yet." There was something in his voice that sounded almost like surprise, like he had not expected her to be this good. "You have removed 13 separate traps from this section alone, while making it appear that you simply improved the clarity of the language. That is exceptional work, Nora." The sound of her name and his voice did something strange to her nervous system. No one had ever said her name like that before. Like it mattered. Like she mattered. "Thank you, Your Majesty," she managed. Kieran set the papers down and turned to face her fully. In the firelight, with shadows cutting across his face, he looked even more dangerous than he had in the council chamber. But there was something else there too. Something in the way he was looking at her that made her skin feel too sensitive, made her aware of how small and defenseless she was compared to him, made her aware of things she had never let herself think about before. "You are not afraid of me anymore," he observed. "You were terrified in the council chamber, terrified when I brought you here. But now, after 11 hours of working in my space, surrounded by my scent, you are calmer." "Why?" Nora blinked, caught off guard by the question. Was it true? She examined her own emotional state and realized he was right. The fear that had been thrumming through her veins all evening had faded to something else, something that was not quite comfort, but was not terror either. "I suppose because you have given me no reason to be afraid," she said, slowly. "You have been nothing but direct and fair with me. You recognized the value of my observations when no one else did. You trusted me with an important task, instead of dismissing me the way everyone else always has. Fear usually comes from unpredictability, from not knowing what to expect. But you have been entirely consistent." Kieran tilted his head slightly, studying her like she was a puzzle he was trying to solve. "Most wolves are afraid of me because of what they know I am capable of. Because they have heard the stories of what happens to those who cross me, who threaten my pack, who challenge my authority. The fear is not about unpredictability. It is about the very predictable consequences of defiance. Nora met his gaze, surprised by her own boldness. "But I have not defied you, Your Majesty. I have done exactly what you asked. Why would I fear predictable consequences when I have no intention of doing anything to trigger them?" Something flashed in those silver eyes. Something hot and sharp and almost hungry. "You are either exceptionally brave or exceptionally naive." "Perhaps a bit of both," Nora admitted. "But I am also practical. You are the Alpha King. You could kill me with one hand without breaking a sweat. Being afraid of that fact does not change it. So I might as well focus on what I can control, which is doing my job well enough that you have no reason to want me dead." The corner of Kieran's mouth twitched. It was not quite a smile, but it was. Close. "You have a remarkable way of looking at things." "It comes from being powerless," Nora said quietly. "When you do not have strength or status or a wolf to protect you, you learn to find other ways to survive. You learn to be useful. You learn to see things others miss, because that is the only value you can offer. You learn to speak truth, even when it is dangerous, because lies are a luxury you cannot afford when you have nothing else to trade on." The air between them felt charged. Suddenly, heavy with something Nora could not name. Kieran took a step closer. Close enough that she had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. "You think you are powerless," he said, his voice dropping to something low and rough. "But you walked into a room full of predators and challenged them based on nothing but the strength of your convictions and the sharpness of your mind. You saw a trap that I had spent months tracking. You have worked for 11 hours straight on a task that could save thousands of lives, never once complaining or asking for recognition. That is not powerlessness, Nora. That is a different kind of power, one that most wolves will never understand." Nora's breath caught in her throat. She could smell him now, something dark and wild like winter forests and smoke. Could see the way his eyes had darkened, the way his jaw was tight like he was holding himself back from something. Could feel her own body responding in ways that made no sense, made her want to move closer, even though every instinct told her that would be dangerous. "Your Majesty," she whispered, not sure what she was asking for, not sure what she was even saying. Kieran's hand came up slowly, giving her plenty of time to move away, to object. But Nora stayed frozen as his fingers brushed against her jaw, tilting her face up toward his. His touch was surprisingly gentle for someone so clearly capable of violence. "Do you know what I see when I look at you?" he asked softly. Nora shook her head, not trusting her voice. "I see the rarest thing in the world," Kieran said. "A mind that is not corrupted by power or status. A person who values truth more than approval. Someone who would rather be right and rejected than wrong and accepted. Do you have any idea how exceptional that is? How precious?" His thumb traced along her jawline, and Nora felt heat spread through her entire body from that single point of contact. "The world is full of strong wolves," Kieran continued, "full of dominant alphas and powerful warriors. Strength is common. But intelligence combined with integrity, wisdom combined with courage, that is vanishingly rare. And I have been searching for it for a very long time. What do you think will happen next? Leave your predictions in the comments below." Nora could not breathe, could not think, could only stare up at the Alpha King and wonder what was happening, what this meant. Why? He was looking at her like she was something valuable instead of something disposable. "Why?" she managed to ask. "Why would you be searching for that?" Kieran's expression shifted, became something almost vulnerable for just a moment. "Because ruling requires more than strength and fear. It requires strategy and wisdom. It requires seeing 10 moves ahead, understanding consequences and connections that others miss. And I am tired, Nora. Tired of being surrounded by wolves who only know how to submit or challenge, who see every interaction as a contest of dominance, who cannot think beyond the hierarchy. I need someone who sees what I see, who understands what I understand, who can stand beside me not because they are forced to submit, but because they choose to be there." His hand dropped away from her face, and Nora almost whimpered at the loss of contact. Kieran stepped back, putting distance between them, and she saw him visibly reassert control over himself. "Finish the treaty," he said, his voice back to its usual cold authority. "You have a few hours yet before dawn. I want it completed before the Nightshade Pack arrives." Then he was gone again, leaving Nora shaking and confused, and feeling like the entire world had just shifted beneath her feet. She sat back down at the desk and tried to focus on the work, but her mind kept replaying the way he had touched her, the things he had said, the raw want she had seen in his eyes before he locked it away. The Alpha King had just told her she was exceptional, precious, that he had been searching for someone like her. What did that mean? And why did it terrify her almost as much as it thrilled her? She forced herself to concentrate, to push aside the chaos of emotions and focus on the task at hand. There would be time to process everything else later. Right now, she had a treaty to finish and a trap to defuse. She worked through the remaining hours until dawn began to lighten the windows. When she finally sat down, her pen and looked at the completed, modified treaty, she felt a fierce surge of pride. She had done it. She had taken a document designed to destroy 12 packs and transformed it into something that would protect them instead. She had turned the Silverfang Syndicate's own weapon against them. The door opened, and Kieran entered, followed by several guards and what looked like official witnesses. "It is done?" he asked. Nora nodded, standing and gesturing to the neat stack of papers. "Every trap has been neutralized. Every contradiction resolved. The changes appear minor, but are structurally comprehensive. They will not realize what we have done until it is far too late." Kieran picked up the treaty and began reading through it, his silver eyes scanning each page with incredible speed. The witnesses shifted nervously, clearly uncomfortable being in such close quarters with the Alpha King. Finally, Kieran looked up, and there was something fierce and approving in his gaze. "This is perfect," he said. "You have done exactly what I needed. Better than I hoped." He turned to the guards. "Take this to be copied and prepared for the signing ceremony, and ensure that Nora is given proper quarters to rest and refresh herself before the ceremony begins. She will be standing with the council during the signing." The guards looked shocked. So did the witnesses. Standing with the council was a position reserved for alphas, betas, and high-ranking pack members, not for wolfless omegas, who spent their time taking notes and serving drinks. "Your Majesty, is that wise?" one of the witnesses asked carefully. "The Blood Moon Pack may object to such a breach of protocol." Kieran's eyes went cold. "I am the Alpha King. I do not ask permission from the packs I rule. If I say Nora stands with the council, then she stands with the council. Anyone who objects can take it up with me personally." The witnesses paled and bowed their heads in submission. No one in their right mind would challenge the Alpha King personally. "Now go," Kieran ordered. "We have much to prepare before the Nightshade Pack arrives." Everyone scattered except Nora, who stood uncertainly by the desk, still trying to process the fact that she was apparently going to be present for the signing ceremony, that she was going to be standing among the most powerful wolves in the territory like she belonged there. "Come with me," Kieran said, and once again, it was not a request. Nora followed him out of the office and through more corridors until they reached a suite of rooms she had never seen before. The quarters were beautiful, luxurious even, with soft carpets and elegant furniture and windows that looked out over the compound's gardens. "These are your rooms for the duration of your stay," Kieran said. "Rest, eat, prepare yourself for this evening. Clothing appropriate for the ceremony will be provided. You will be escorted to the hall when it is time." Nora stared at him. "Your Majesty, I do not understand. Why are you doing this? Why are you giving me such honor when I am nothing, when I have no status or power or wolf?" Kieran looked at her for a long moment, and there was something almost sad in his expression. "Because you earned it," he said simply. "Because you did something extraordinary and deserve to be recognized for it. And because I am making a point to every wolf who will be in that ceremony tonight. The point that value comes in many forms, and intelligence and integrity are worth more than all the dominance displays and territorial posturing in the world. He moved toward the door, then paused. And Nora? After this is over, after the Silverfang Syndicate is exposed and dealt with, we need to talk, you and I, about things that cannot be discussed until the immediate threat is handled. Heat flooded through Nora's body at the intensity in his voice, at the promise implicit in those words. Yes, Your Majesty, she whispered. Then she was alone in rooms that were far too grand for someone like her, with dawn light streaming through the windows, and exhaustion finally crashing over her like a wave. She collapsed onto the bed, still wearing her simple clothes, still unable to fully believe any of this was real. And she fell asleep wondering what would happen at the ceremony, what would happen when the trap was sprung, what Kieran had meant by that look in his eyes when he said they needed to talk. She woke to find the sun high in the sky and servants bustling around the room, laying out clothing and preparing a bath and setting out food. They treated her with a deference that was completely foreign, calling her Miss and bowing their heads when they addressed her. It was surreal. By the time she was bathed and dressed in the gown they had provided, a beautiful deep green dress that fit her perfectly and made her look elegant rather than plain, Nora felt like she was living in someone else's life. The dress had long sleeves and a modest neckline, but hugged her figure in a way that made her feel feminine and powerful at the same time. Her hair had been arranged in an intricate style that was both sophisticated and comfortable. She looked in the mirror and barely recognized herself. An escort of guards arrived precisely on time to take her to the ceremony hall. As they walked through the compound, Nora noticed how other wolves stared at her now. Not with contempt or pity, but with confusion and speculation. The wolfless. Omega was being treated like someone important. It did not make sense to them. It barely made sense to her. The ceremony hall was enormous, with vaulted ceilings and stone columns and rows of seating for hundreds of witnesses. At the front, a massive table had been set up with the treaty displayed prominently. The 12 alphas were already there, along with their entourages. And standing off to one side, dressed in formal black that made him look even more intimidating than usual, was Kieran. His eyes found her the moment she entered the hall. Nora felt the weight of his gaze like a physical touch, felt something electric pass between them even across the distance. One of the guards escorted her to a position near the front, just behind where the alphas would stand during the signing. It was a place of honor, of witness, of importance. She could feel the stares, could hear the whispered speculation, could sense the resentment from some and the curiosity from others. Her father looked like he wanted to sink through the floor. The other Blood Moon Pack members looked between her and Kieran with barely concealed shock. Then the doors at the far end of the hall opened, and the Nightshade Pack representatives entered. There were 5 of them, led by Alpha Thorn, a powerful wolf in his 50s with gray-streaked hair and cold eyes. They walked with confidence, with the assurance of wolves who thought they held all the cards. They had no idea their trap had been dismantled. They had no idea they were walking into an ambush of their own making. The ceremony began with formal greetings and traditional acknowledgments of territory and respect. Nora watched it all with her heart pounding, wondering when Kieran would make his move, when the truth would come out. The treaty was presented, the modified version that looked so innocuous, but was actually completely different from what the Silverfang Syndicate had designed. Alpha Thorn and his representatives reviewed it carefully, and Nora held her breath, terrified they would notice the changes. But they did not. Why would they? The changes looked minor, cosmetic, clarifications and corrections that any competent administrator might make. They had no reason to suspect that every trap they had carefully laid had been neutralized. One by one, the alphas approached the table and signed the treaty. Each signature was witnessed and sealed with blood and power, the ancient way of binding wolves to their word. When all 12 alphas had signed, Alpha Thorn stepped forward with a smile that did not reach his eyes. "With this treaty, our packs are united in alliance," he said formally, "bound by law and honor to support each other, to share resources and territory according to the terms we have agreed upon." Indeed, Kieran said, his voice cutting through the hall like a blade. Bound by law, which is why it is so fortunate that we corrected the errors in the original document before signing. The atmosphere in the hall changed instantly. Alpha Thorn's smile froze on his face. Errors, Your Majesty? I am not sure what you mean. The treaty was carefully reviewed by legal experts from all our packs. Yes, Kieran agreed. And yet somehow, those legal experts missed dozens of contradictions, impossible timelines, and clauses that would have put every pack in immediate breach of the agreement the moment the ink dried. Curious, is it not? Thorn's face went pale. That is absurd. There were no such problems. Kieran gestured, and guards brought forward documents, laying them out on the table. This is the original treaty you proposed, and this is the version we just signed. Allow me to point out the differences. What followed was devastating. Kieran walked through every trap, every contradiction, every carefully hidden mechanism that would have destroyed the Allied packs. He did it methodically, clinically, making it impossible to deny or deflect. And with each revelation, Alpha. Thorn and his representatives looked more trapped, more desperate. You have been infiltrated by the Silver Fang Syndicate, Kieran said coldly. Your pack has been corrupted and used as a weapon against your former allies. This treaty was designed to legally justify a coordinated attack that would have left all 12 packs vulnerable to conquest. Thorn tried to protest, tried to claim ignorance, but it was too late. The other alphas were on their feet now, fury and betrayal radiating from them in waves. The Nightshade representatives were surrounded, outnumbered, and completely exposed. You will submit to investigation, Kieran ordered. Your entire pack will be examined for Silverfang corruption. Those who are found to be complicit will face execution. Those who were innocent will be given the choice to join other packs or rebuild under new leadership. And you, Thorn, will tell me everything you know about the Silverfang Syndicate's plans and operations. You will do this willingly, or I will tear the information from your mind and leave you a broken shell. Your choice. Thorn collapsed to his knees, submission and terror overwhelming his pride. Your Majesty, please. I did not know. They approached me, offered me power, promised me that my pack would be elevated. I did not understand the scope of what they planned. I swear I did not know it would lead to this. Ignorance is not innocence, Kieran said. But cooperation may earn you a quicker death than you deserve. He turned to address the gathered wolves. This is what happens when we allow greed and ambition to blind us to danger. This is what happens when we trust without verifying, when we prioritize status over substance. The Silverfang Syndicate nearly destroyed us all because they knew we would not look past our own hierarchies and prejudices to see the truth. His eyes found Nora in the crowd. They did not account for someone who values truth more than acceptance. Someone who would speak up even when it meant ridicule and rejection. Someone whose mind is sharp enough to see what others miss, and whose courage is strong enough to act on what they see. Every eye in the hall turned to Nora. She felt heat crawl up her neck as she realized what Kieran was doing. He was giving her public credit, public recognition, in front of every major alpha and hundreds of witnesses. Nora of the Blood Moon Pack identified the trap, Kieran said. She saw the contradictions and had the courage to speak up despite knowing she would be mocked and dismissed. She spent the entire night rewriting this treaty, neutralizing every trap while making the changes appear minor enough to avoid suspicion. She is the reason you are all still free, still alive, still in control of your territories. Remember that the next time you think power can only come from dominance and strength. The silence in the hall was absolute. Nora could see shock on every face, could see her father's expression of complete disbelief, could see the other Blood Moon wolves looking at her like they had never seen her before. Then Kieran did something that made Nora's breath stop entirely. He walked across the hall, past all the alphas and betas and high-ranking wolves, directly to where she stood, and he bowed his head to her. The Alpha King, the most powerful wolf in North America, bowing his head in respect and acknowledgement to a wolfless Omega. The gesture sent shockwaves through the crowd. Wolves gasped. Someone made a strangled sound of disbelief. Because an alpha never bowed to an omega, and the alpha king bowed to no one. Thank you, Kieran said quietly, his voice pitched low enough that only Nora could hear. You saved thousands of lives today. You proved that the measures we use to judge worth are often meaningless. And you reminded me why I do this job in the first place. Then he straightened and turned back to the assembly. The ceremony is concluded. The Nightshade representatives will be taken into custody for questioning. The rest of you will return to your territories and remain vigilant for any signs of Silverfang infiltration. We will root out this threat completely and ensure it can never threaten us again. The crowd began to disperse slowly, wolves still staring at Nora, still trying to process what they had witnessed. But Kieran caught her wrist gently before she could follow the others. Come with me, he said. We have that talk I mentioned earlier. Nora's heart leaped into her throat, but she nodded and let him lead her from the hall. They walked in silence through empty corridors until they reached a private terrace that overlooked the forests beyond the compound. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. It was beautiful and peaceful, and completely at odds with the chaos of emotions churning in Nora's chest. Kieran stood at the railing, looking out at the trees, his profile sharp and perfect in the fading light. I owe you an explanation, he said finally, for what I said last night, for the things I'm about to say now. Nora moved to stand beside him, her hands gripping the railing to keep them from shaking. Your Majesty, you do not owe me anything. Kieran, he corrected. When we are alone, you call me Kieran. And yes, I do owe you this. Because what I am about to ask of you will change your life completely, and you deserve to understand why I am asking it. He turned to face her fully, and the intensity in his silver eyes made Nora's breath catch. You are my mate, Nora. The world stopped. Time stopped. Everything stopped. What? Nora whispered, sure she had misheard. Sure this could not be real. You are my mate, Kieran repeated. I knew it the moment you spoke in that council chamber. The moment I heard your voice, caught your scent beneath all the others. The mate bond hit me like lightning, and I have been fighting to control it ever since because the timing was impossible. Because there was too much at stake. Because I needed you focused on the task at hand, rather than dealing with this. Nora shook her head, backing away slightly. That is not possible. I do not have a wolf. I cannot have a mate. The bond only works between wolves. That is what everyone believes, Kieran said. But it is not entirely true. The mate bond is more than just wolf to wolf. It is soul to soul. And your soul calls to mine so powerfully that it overrides every rule, every expectation, every limitation anyone ever imposed. He took a step toward her, and Nora felt tears prick her eyes because this could not be happening. This could not be real. Things like this did not happen to girls like her. I know this is overwhelming, Kieran said gently. I know you need time to process it. But I also need you to understand something crucial. I am not asking you to accept this bond because I am the Alpha King, and you are supposed to obey me. I am asking you to consider it because I believe we could be extraordinary together. Because your mind complements mine in ways I have never experienced. Because when I look at you, I see a partner, not a subject. I see someone who could stand beside me not because of hierarchy or obligation, but because we choose each other. Nora's hands were shaking. Her entire body was shaking. I do not understand any of this. How can I be your mate when everyone has always told me I am worthless? When I have spent my entire life being reminded that I am broken, incomplete, a mistake of nature? You are not broken, Kieran said fiercely. You are different, and different is not the same as lesser. The fact that you do not have a wolf does not make you incomplete. It makes you unique. And I suspect there is far more to your story than even you understand. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. The contact sent electricity racing up Nora's arm, made her gasp at the intensity of it. Do you feel that? Kieran asked. That is the bond. That is your soul recognizing mine. Tell me you do not feel it. If you want to see how this story ends, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on. Nora could not lie. She did feel it. She had been feeling it since the first moment Kieran touched her face in his office, since the first time his eyes met hers. That pull, that magnetism, that sense of rightness that made no logical sense but felt more real than anything she had ever experienced. I feel it, she whispered. But I am afraid. Afraid that this is a dream I will wake up from. Afraid that I will disappoint you. Afraid that I am not strong enough or smart enough or worthy enough for whatever you think I could be. Kieran's thumb stroked across her knuckles, and the gentleness of the gesture made tears spill down her cheeks. You spent 11 hours solving a problem that had stumped the best strategic minds in 12 packs. You spoke truth to power when it could have gotten you killed. You rewrote an entire treaty overnight and did it so perfectly that no one could detect the changes. Nora, you are already strong enough. You are already smart enough. You have always been worthy. The only one who has not recognized that is you. He pulled her closer, slowly, carefully, until there were only inches between them. I am not asking for an answer right now. I am not asking you to accept the bond or agree to anything. I am simply telling you the truth. You are my mate. I want you by my side. Not as an omega, not as a servant or a trophy or an obligation, but as a partner, as an equal, as someone whose mind and courage and integrity make them invaluable in ways that have nothing to do with dominance or power. Nora looked up at him, at this dangerous, powerful, terrifying man who was looking at her like she was the most precious thing in his world. What happens now? She asked. Now, you go back to your pack, Kieran said. You return to your life, and you think about what I have told you. Think about what you want, what you feel, what you need. And when you are ready, when you have made your decision, you come to me, or you do not. The choice is entirely yours. He leaned down, and Nora thought he might kiss her, thought her heart might actually stop from anticipation. But instead, he pressed his lips to her forehead, a gesture that was somehow more intimate than any kiss could have been. I will wait, he murmured against her skin. However long it takes, you are worth waiting for. Then he stepped back, putting distance between them even though Nora could see how much it cost him, could see the tension in every line of his body. My guards will escort you home safely. If you need anything at all, you send word to me immediately. You are under my protection now, Nora. No one will harm you or dismiss you or belittle you again, not without answering to me. Nora nodded, not trusting her voice, not able to form words around the chaos of emotions threatening to overwhelm her. She let the guards lead her from the terrace, through the compound, to a car that would take her back to Blood Moon Pack territory. And the entire journey, she replayed everything that had happened, everything Kieran had said, the feeling of his hand in hers, and his lips against her forehead. She was the Alpha King's mate. It was impossible. It was terrifying. It was the most incredible thing that had ever happened to her. When she arrived back at the Blood Moon Pack house, she expected things to be different. Expected her father to acknowledge her. Expected the pack members to show some recognition of what she had done. But instead, she found hostility, resentment, fear. Her father would not look at her. Her mother avoided her. The other pack members whispered when she passed, and the whispers were not kind. She thinks she is special now, someone muttered. The Alpha King's pet. Too good for the rest of us. It will not last. Someone else said. He will realize she is nothing, and then where will she be? More trouble than she is worth. Nora went to her small room, the same cramped space she had occupied her entire life, and she felt the weight of everything crash down on her. She had saved 12 packs. She had been honored by the Alpha King himself. She had discovered she was his mate. And her own pack could not be happy for her, could not see her as anything but a problem, a source of inconvenience, something to be tolerated. rather than valued. She lay on her bed and let herself cry. Let herself feel the hurt and the loneliness and the overwhelming confusion of being offered everything she had ever dreamed of while simultaneously being rejected by the only family she had ever known. She cried until she had no tears left, until exhaustion pulled her into sleep. And she dreamed of silver eyes and gentle hands and a voice that told her she was worthy. The days that followed were strange and difficult. Nora returned to her usual duties within the pack, but everything felt different now. People treated her with a weird mixture of deference and resentment. They did not dare be openly hostile because she was under the Alpha King's protection. But they made it clear she was not welcome, not wanted, not truly part of them anymore. She received a message from Kieran every day. Sometimes it was just a simple check-in, asking if she was well, if she needed anything. Sometimes it was longer, sharing thoughts about pack, politics, or strategic concerns, treating her like the intelligent partner he claimed to see her as. She responded carefully, honestly, letting herself enjoy the conversations, even as she wrestled with the enormous decision facing her. Because accepting the mate bond with Kieran meant leaving everything she knew. It meant stepping into a world of power and politics, and danger that she had never been prepared for. It meant trusting that his interest in her was genuine, that she would not disappoint him, that she could actually be the partner he believed she could be. 2 weeks after the ceremony, Nora was in the pack library, one of the few places she could find peace, when she stumbled across an old book about wolf genetics and bloodlines. She was not looking for anything in particular, just seeking distraction. But something made her pull that particular book from the shelf. She opened it randomly and began reading. And what she found changed everything. There was a section on ancient bloodlines, on wolves with power so immense they did not manifest as typical wolf forms. The text described witches, seers, healers, whose abilities were so strong that they eclipsed the normal wolf traits, leaving the person appearing wolfless, when in reality they carried dormant magic that was simply different from standard shifter gifts. Nora's hands shook as she read. Could that be her? Could there be a reason she had never shifted, never manifested a wolf? Not because she was broken or incomplete, but because she carried something else entirely. She kept reading, growing more excited and more terrified with each page. The book mentioned tests, rituals that could help identify dormant magical bloodlines. And it specifically noted that such individuals often possessed exceptional intelligence, heightened perception, and resistance to typical wolf dominance because they were not meant to operate within the standard hierarchy. They were meant to stand apart, stand beside. She needed to know, needed to understand if this could be true. But the tests required resources and knowledge she did not have access to. Unless she asked Kieran. Nora pulled out her phone and stared at it for a long time. Then she typed out a message. I found something. Information about my condition. I need help investigating it. If your offer still stands, I would like to come to you. The response came within seconds. My offer will always stand. I am sending a car for you now. Pack what you need. You are coming home. Home. Kieran had called his territory home, like she already belonged there, like she had always belonged there. Nora packed quickly, taking only essentials. She did not tell her father or mother she was leaving, did not explain to anyone in the pack. They had made it clear she was not truly one of them anyway. Why give them the satisfaction of refusing to let her go? When the car arrived, driven by 2 of Kieran's personal guards, Nora climbed in without looking. Back. She watched the Blood Moon Pack territory disappear behind her and felt no regret. Only relief and hope. The drive to the Alpha King's main compound took 3 hours. Nora spent the time reading more of the books she had taken from the library, her excitement growing with each page. If this was true, if she really did carry dormant magical bloodlines, it would explain so much. Her ability to see patterns others missed, her resistance to being intimidated by dominant wolves, the way she had always felt like she did not quite fit anywhere. When they arrived at the compound, Kieran was waiting for her personally. He stood at the entrance to the main building, dressed casually in dark jeans and a shirt that somehow made him look even more imposing than his formal wear did. His eyes locked on her the moment the car stopped, and Nora felt that electric pull between them intensify. She got out of the car, clutching the book to her chest, and walked toward him. And then she was running. And he was moving to meet her, and they came together in the middle of the courtyard with enough force to steal her breath. Kieran's arms wrapped around her, pulling her against his chest, and Nora felt something inside her slot into place. Something that had been fractured and scattered her entire life suddenly felt whole. "I have you," Kieran murmured into her hair. "I have you, and I am never letting you go. Not unless you want me to." "I do not want you to," Nora whispered back. "I am terrified and confused, and I still do not understand most of what is happening. But I know I belong here. With you. I feel it." Kieran pulled back just enough to look down at her, and his expression was fierce and possessive and so tender it made her chest ache. "Show me what you found. Tell me what you need, and we will figure it out together." They spent hours in his private library, going through the book Nora had found, and cross-referencing it with texts Kieran had collected from across the world. And the more they researched, the more certain Nora became. She was not wolfless. She was something else entirely, something rarer and potentially more powerful. "We need to perform the awakening ritual," Kieran said finally, looking up from a particularly old tome written in a language Nora did not recognize. "It is described here. If you truly carry dormant magical bloodlines, this ritual will bring them to the surface. But I need to warn you, it will not be comfortable. Awakening power that has been suppressed for decades tends to be intense." Nora met his eyes steadily. "I have spent my entire life believing I was broken. If there is even a chance that I am not, that there is a reason for everything I have been through, I need to know. I need to try." Kieran nodded. "Then we do this tonight. I will gather what we need for the ritual. In the meantime, you should rest and eat. You will need your strength." But Nora caught his hand before he could move away. "Kieran, if this works, if I do have power, what does that mean for us? For the mate bond?" His expression softened. "It means exactly what I told you before. You are my mate, my equal, my partner. The only difference is that now you will understand your own worth, your own strength. And honestly, that just makes me want you more." He leaned down and pressed a gentle kiss to her lips, the first real kiss they had shared. It was soft and sweet, and made Nora's entire body light up like she had been struck by lightning. When he pulled away, they were both breathing hard. "Rest," Kieran said roughly. "Because after this ritual, after you come into your power, I am going to claim you properly, as my mate, as my queen. And I'm going to make sure every wolf in existence knows you belong to me." Heat flooded through Nora at the promise in his words. But there was also joy. Pure, overwhelming joy. Because for the first time in her life, she was not being tolerated or pitied or dismissed. She was being chosen, wanted, treasured. That night, under a full moon, Kieran led Nora to a clearing deep in the forest that surrounded his compound. A circle had been drawn in the earth, marked with symbols that glowed faintly in the moonlight. Kieran's most trusted advisors were there, along with a witch who specialized in bloodline magic. "Are you ready?" Kieran asked, his hand warm and steady in hers. Nora looked at the circle, at the magic waiting to be unleashed, at the man standing beside her offering. Her everything she had ever wanted. "Yes," she said, "I am ready." The ritual was exactly as intense as Kieran had warned. The moment Nora stepped into the circle and the witch began chanting, pain exploded through her body. Not the pain of injury, but the pain of transformation. Of something that had been locked away for so long finally breaking free. She felt power surge through her veins like liquid fire. Felt her perception expand until she could sense everything around her. The life force. Of every tree, every creature, every wolf present. Felt knowledge flood her mind, ancestral memories and abilities that had been waiting dormant in her blood for generations. She gasped and would have fallen, but Kieran was there, his arms around her, holding her steady, while power tore through her system and remade her from the inside out. "I have you," he said again, his voice an anchor in the chaos. "Stay with me, Nora. Let it happen. Let yourself become what you were always meant to be." Colors exploded behind her eyes. She saw visions of women who looked like her, powerful witches who had stood beside alpha kings throughout history, who had used their gifts to protect and guide and heal. She saw her mother's bloodline, traced back centuries to a coven of witches who had bonded with wolf packs to create something stronger than either species alone. And she understood finally why she had never shifted. Because she was not meant to be a wolf. She was meant to be something more. When the power finally settled, when the pain faded and Nora could breathe again, she opened her eyes to find Kieran staring at her with wonder. "Your eyes," he said softly. "They are glowing." Nora felt different, stronger, more complete than she had ever felt in her life. She lifted her hand and watched as purple light danced across her fingers, responding to her will. "I am a witch," she said, her voice filled with awe. "A bloodline witch. That is why I never had a wolf. I was never meant to have one." The witch who had conducted the ritual stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. "You are not just any bloodline witch," she said reverently. "You carry the Moonweaver line, the rarest and most powerful of all magical bloodlines. Your ancestors were queens and counselors, healers and warriors. You are extraordinary, child." Nora looked at Kieran, who was still holding her, still looking at her like she was the most amazing thing he had ever seen. "So I am your mate, not despite being wolfless, but because I am something else entirely. You are my mate, because you are you," Kieran corrected. "The power is just confirmation of what I already knew, that you are exceptional, that you are exactly what I need, that we were meant to find each other." He swept her up into his arms, ignoring the observers, and kissed her deeply. Nora wrapped her arms around his neck and kissed him back, pouring all her relief and joy and love into the contact. Because yes, it was love. She loved him. This fierce, powerful, dangerous man who had seen her worth when no one else did, who had waited patiently for her to see it herself, who had given her the freedom to choose him rather than forcing her to submit. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Kieran looked at the gathered witnesses. "Leave us," he commanded. "Now." They scattered quickly, the witch bowing deeply before disappearing into the trees. And then Nora and Kieran were alone in the clearing, with the moonlight and magic and the mate bond singing between them. "Mine," Kieran growled, his eyes flashing silver. "Say it. Tell me you are mine." "Yours," Nora breathed. "And you are mine. My mate, my king, my everything." Kieran claimed her mouth again, and this time there was nothing gentle about it. This was possession and promise and pure need. His hands tangled in her hair, holding her exactly where he wanted her while he kissed her, like he was trying to consume her soul. Nora kissed him back. With equal fervor, her newly awakened power sparking between them, feeding the connection, making everything more intense. When they finally came up for air, Kieran rested his forehead against hers. "I am taking you back to our rooms now, and I am going to spend the rest of the night showing you exactly how much you mean to me, how much I value you, how much I love you." Nora's heart stuttered. "You love me? From the moment you stood up in that council chamber and refused to be silenced?" Kieran said fiercely. "From the first time I saw you risk everything for the truth. Yes, Nora, I love you, completely, irrevocably, forever." Tears spilled down her cheeks, but they were happy tears this time, tears of joy and relief and overwhelming gratitude. "I love you too," she whispered. "I think I have loved you since you called me exceptional, since you looked at me and saw worth instead of worthlessness." Kieran kissed her tears away, then lifted her into his arms and began walking back toward the compound. "You are about to become the Alpha King's queen," he said. "You are about to take your place beside me as my equal and partner. The wolves who mocked you, who dismissed you, who tried to make you believe you were nothing, are going to bow to you. Are you ready for that?" Nora thought about her father's dismissal, about Alpha Marcus's cruelty, about every wolf who had ever laughed at her or pitied her or treated her like she was disposable. And she smiled. "Yes," she I am absolutely ready for that." The ceremony where Kieran officially claimed Nora as his mate and queen was held 1 month later. Representatives from every pack in North America attended, along with dignitaries from packs overseas. The hall was packed with the most powerful wolves in the world, and Nora stood at the front of it all, dressed in deep purple that matched her magical aura, her head held high, her hand firmly in Kieran's. When he proclaimed her his queen, his mate, his equal in all things, the hall erupted in cheers, most of them genuine, some forced, but all of them respectful because no one dared disrespect the Alpha King's chosen mate. Especially not when that mate was a moonweaver witch with power that hummed through the hall like electricity. Nora saw her father in the crowd, saw him staring at her with regret and confusion and something that might have been pride far too late. She felt nothing looking at him. No anger, no satisfaction, just indifference. He had his chance to value her and had chosen not to. That was his loss, not hers. After the ceremony, there was a reception that lasted hours. Wolves approached to offer congratulations and make alliances and curry favor with the new queen. And Nora handled it all with grace and intelligence, her diplomatic skills proving exactly as sharp as Kieran had believed they would be. But her favorite moment came when Alpha Marcus approached, his expression stiff and uncomfortable. "Your Majesty," he said, bowing to her deeply. "I must apologize for my behavior during the council meeting. I did not recognize your value, and I spoke to you with disrespect you did not deserve." Nora looked at him for a long moment, remembering his cruelty, his laughter, the way he had tried to humiliate her. "I accept your apology, Alpha Marcus," she said coolly. "And I suggest you learn from this experience. Power comes in many forms. Intelligence and integrity matter just as much as strength and dominance. Judge others based on their worth, not their status. You will make fewer enemies and have fewer regrets that way." Marcus bowed again and retreated quickly, and Nora felt Kieran's hand squeeze hers approvingly. "Perfectly handled," he murmured. "Gracious, but with just enough edge to make the point. You are going to be an exceptional queen." "I am going to try," Nora said. "I still have so much to learn." "We both do," Kieran assured her. "That is what makes this interesting. We get to learn together. We get to build something new together. A reign based not just on power and fear, but on wisdom and strategy and genuine partnership." He pulled her closer, right there in front of hundreds of witnesses, and kissed her soundly. "I love you, my brilliant, courageous, extraordinary mate. And I am going to spend the rest of my very long life making sure you never doubt your worth again." Nora kissed him back, not caring who was watching, not caring about protocol or propriety. "I love you too, my king, my mate, my home." Because that was what Kieran had given her. Not just power or status or recognition, though those were all wonderful. He had given her something far more precious. He had given her a place where she belonged. A place where she was valued not despite her differences, but because of them. A place where intelligence and integrity mattered more than hierarchy and force. He had given her a home, and she was never letting it go. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who loves epic romance. Tell me in the comments, did you see this ending coming? Years later, when historians wrote about the reign of King Kieran and Queen Nora, they would call it the Golden Age. A time when the packs were united not through fear, but through wisdom. When conflicts were resolved through strategy rather than violence. When intelligence was valued as highly as strength. and at the center of it all was a wolfless Omega who had been rejected and ridiculed and dismissed as worthless, who had risen to become the most powerful and respected queen in wolf history. All because one wolf had been wise enough to see her worth, and brave enough to claim her as his own.